McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to introduce a couple of my pages in the front row here. We have Cody Rose and Carson Unruh, and they are both from Newton School District. So we're glad to have them here today. Thank you.
Welcome to the Ways and Means Committee. Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to introduce two guests as well. Tom and Teresa Young are in the back there, and they are part of a very successful company, a young sign company that did put up signage in Arrowhead Stadium, Sporting KC, schools around the area, and more importantly, he's heavily invested in making sure that any kind of museum that goes in at Lansing Correctional Facility is a huge, raging success. So we're happy to have him here.
Welcome to the Ways and Means Committee. Good to have you. Next item we have is a request for bill introductions. Seeing none, we'll move on. We're going to start out with final action on House Bill 2551, Joint Committee on Special Claims Against the State Making Appropriations, authorizing certain transfers, authorizing certain disbursements. We got a technical amendment. Would you mind, Merle? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, David is passing out some technical amendments for the committee to consider. These essentially just make corrections to some spelling items. One claimant's name was misspelled, and another item was the name of a fund from the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. It is the Parks Fee Fund, not the Park Fee Fund. And it is Keyshawn spelled with a U, not Keyshawn spelled with a W. And those are the two technical corrections. I can stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Merle? Seeing none. Thank you, Merle. Senator Clays.
Mr. Chairman, I move the amendment.
I have a motion, second by Senator McGinn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the favorable recommendation of House Bill 2551 as amended.
I have a motion. We have a second. Senator Fagg seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have final action on House Bill 2491, abolishing the Law Enforcement Training Center Fund. All liabilities of such fund are transferred to and imposed on the state general funds. Monies previously credited to such a fund shall be credited to the state general fund. We don't have any amendments on that one, I don't think. Are there any questions or discussion on this bill? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding is that the fees they're taking in does not meet the obligation. Is that correct?
I'm going to let Senator Clays speak on this because we talked about it earlier. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I believe even in FY24 they were falling short, so there was a significant shortfall that's predicted for next year.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move favorable passage of House Bill 2491.
We have a motion. We have a second by Senator Fagg. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to Senate Bill 552, enacting the Kansas Campus Restoration Act to address deferred maintenance and demolition of facilities at post-secondary educational institutions, establishing the Kansas Campus Restoration Fund in the state treasury and authorizing certain transfers from the state general fund to such a fund. And we have a couple amendments, if we could pass them out. Pardon me?
biggest one first. Let's lose some of that weight you got to carry around. There you go.
If you want to have you explain it. David, do you want to, or you want to explain that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What the amendment would do is actually go in and amend 743201B, which is definition section, to then, for post-secondary educational institution, this would be page 3 of the balloon, the big box there. We're going to, for post-secondary educational institution, will now include an Institute of Technology, which, as you can see, is defined up above in current law as the Institute of Technology at Washburn University. Just fold that into the definition of post-secondary educational institution. So that way, wherever, throughout the bill where we talk about post-secondary educational institution, it does include then that Washburn Tech, so they would be included in the distribution of the funds, that the 100,000 there that's included in the page 3, line 6, they would be in the 100,000 distribution, and then also page 2, line 6, they would not have to have the match, just like the other community colleges, technical colleges, and municipal university.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions, committee? Senator Pittman.
Just a comment that I appreciate the maker of the amendment doing this, because it seems as though Washburn Tech gets left out a lot of things unless they add it on as an individual line item on anything that's moved. This fundamentally goes back and fixes that definition, so it should prevent it from happening in the future. So I think this is a great amendment.
Any other questions? Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the amendment.
I have a motion. We have a second by Senator Pittman. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we have one other amendment. David? This is the one that the Board of Regents had recommended when they were here the other day. So, David, would you like to explain, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is a recommendation from the Board of Regents. This is in section 4 there on page 2, where to have the regents approve the plans. It would only be for the state educational institutions, which would be the 6 universities under the direct control of the regents, not all of the other institutions, the community colleges, technical colleges. They would not have to actually have those plans approved by the regents. It'd be by their own local governing bodies would do that. And then on page 3, as part of the reporting requirements, so annually on before the first day of the regular session, both the regents would submit a report as indicated under the underlying bill, and then also each community college, technical college, Institute of Technology, municipal university would also submit a report on their expenditures of monies that they received from this fund, that $100,000 each year. And they report that to the Board of Regents and then to the various legislative committees in the same manner as the regents report.
Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the amendment.
We have a motion. We have a second by Senator Fagg. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move favorable passage of Senate Bill 552 as amended.
I have a motion. We have a second by Senator Fagg. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion, okay. You want to be recorded? Okay. Motion passes. Next, we will move on to Senate Bill 529, creating the Dwayne Peasley Technical Training Center District Act to authorize the establishment of the Dwayne Peasley Technical Training Center District in Douglas County, and we have an amendment. David? David, you want to explain this? Pretty simple.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the amendment is really just, there was, I think, in some of the testimony, there was concern about having this question be submitted at the next election, primary or general election. So this would just strike that and then allow the Douglas County to submit this at any primary or general election or at a special election.
Any questions? Seeing none, Senator Clays.
Mr. Chairman, I move the amendment.
I have a motion, second by Senator Fagg. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Any other questions on this bill? Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move favorable passage of Senate Bill 529 as amended.
We have a motion, second by Senator McGinn. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will have Senate Bill 542, making appropriations to the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Service for fiscal year 2025 and creating a program for cities and counties to improve and develop infrastructure for homeless shelters. And I think we have an amendment on this. I'm going to recognize Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Senate Bill 542, if you're looking for that. And there is a balloon amendment. Wait, is it 542? And I will walk through this. Of course, the reviser will assist when necessary, but we'll just go through the highlights of what the balloon amendment does. It extends the provisions of the bill into fiscal year 2026. It reduces the fiscal year 25 appropriation to $15 million, but then adds $5 million to the FY 2026 appropriation for a total of $20 million. It defines shelter as temporary or transitional. It defines wraparound services as those including vocational, behavioral, or physical health. It removes housing as a wraparound service and removes long-term from the prioritization of such services. It requires lawful status in the United States to access services. It requires shelters to be dry, prohibiting entry to those under the influence. Requires reporting to the legislature, creates a civil liability for failure to enforce. If you move to attachment A, it eliminates a precinct in Wichita from consideration for a shelter location. That is specifically the Riverside Hospital, for those wondering where that is. It says it must be used for a shelter facility, whether building new or upgrading existing, so the funds cannot be used for another purpose. It requires State Finance Council to approve the location and site plan of any new shelter facility. It establishes a 2-year grant where 75% is awarded in 25 and 25% is awarded in 26. And then if you move to attachment B, it defines the ordinances required in the process for enforcement, including remedies. It also defines drop-off and homeless individual and disallows drop-offs, also providing remedies for violations. And I will stand for questions and, of course, refer many of them to the revisor.
Senator McGinn.
Okay, I wasn't catching all that right away. Could you just specifically share what is included for Wichita?
Yeah, specifically, we'll go to it in the balloon itself. It is attachment A at the top. No money shall be expended from such account for the building of or capital improvements to a homeless shelter located within the boundaries of Sedgwick County Precinct 606. That is the precinct that contains the Riverside Hospital.
Okay, may I?
Senator McGinn.
So did you change the amount of money that they could apply for? Does that all remain the same?
Senator Clayson.
Whoever wants to put up.
Right, so the total amount available now is 20 million instead of 40 million, so there is a reduction in that regard. We also spread it over a 2-year period with the bulk of the dollars coming in FY '25 and a smaller amount in '26, and split that over that period of time. So there would be, let's say somebody was awarded $1 million, they would receive 750,000 in FY '25 and 250,000 in FY '26.
Okay, I don't see the 20,000, I see 15,000, 15 million.
If you go to attachment A, halfway down, there's a second appropriation for 2026 at 5 million.
And may I continue?
Senator McGinn.
And then what's the purpose of cutting out the Riverside Hospital?
It was requested by more than one senator in the Wichita area to have that restriction put in place. And so it was added to this particular balloon.
Senator McGinn.
I don't agree. So, one senator that's not even on this committee, I would guess, maybe not. And I used to represent that area, but, okay. Thank you for explaining.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I read this quickly, but I don't see anything that allocates any money for rural development.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There may be further amendments. This balloon does not address that, though.
Thank you.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know that, I mean, okay, my question is about attachment B. So is attachment B is attachment B already in the bill and just moved to attachment B?
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attachment B inserts itself under Section 3 on page 2 of the bill. And it is not current language, I don't believe. No, that is new. That is all new language. Yeah.
This was,
Senator Petty.
thank you. Looks pretty similar to what was in the House bill. Would that be correct?
Senator Clays.
So the definition, yeah, you're correct that this is applying those pieces to and including your county shall. No, it's not in there. Yeah. Those are two brand new sections of law. They are more robustly defined than the previous previous bill was.
Thank you.
Senator Petty.
Thank Thank you. And then, so as I'm looking at this, so does attachment B, is this, are all those like A, B, C, D, E? So it says all cities and counties shall adopt an ordinance or resolution. So does every city and county that would be, I guess, applying for any of these funds, they would have to adopt all of these items? Is that correct? Or some of them I'm not seeing, I'm not clear on that.
Senator Claes.
Correct. So all cities and counties shall adopt an ordinance or resolution, and those would be those affected by the act, and that would be those who receive a grant.
Thank you.
Senator Pittman.
That was kind of my question. It does seem wide-reaching beyond the scope of this to say all cities and counties shall adopt an ordinance or resolution prohibiting unauthorized public camping or obstruction of sidewalks without exception. I'd want to make sure that it doesn't apply to all cities, only those that are seeking this grant. And then can you explain what section E of the attachment B on the back page, it says any person may bring a writ of mandamus. Unfortunately, I don't know what that is for a violation of this section for the person and for the state. It seems as though you're saying any person can complain to the city about a homeless person that they see potentially who's receiving these grants and report it. I don't know what the writ of mandamus means, though.
Senator Claes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just further clarifying, it does require all cities and counties to adopt the ordinance for uniformity. The portion about writ of mandamus for a violation of the section for a person and for the state, that would allow for an individual, let's say a business owner who finds that there are homeless camping in front of their place of business and the local government refuses to enforce their ordinances that are now required under law, then that individual could bring suit.
Senator Pittman.
Right, so that would be the positive enforcement act, but it sounds like somebody could complain to the city at any point in time of anybody camping and cause the city or county to have some kind of liability there. And just to repeat, you say all cities and counties shall adopt an ordinance. It's wider ranging than just those that are seeking this grant for uniformity, is what I heard.
Senator Claes.
Yes, yes. All cities and counties must under the statute.
Just to reiterate, there's a mandate for all cities and counties. Instead of us doing this, we're going to mandate that these cities and counties shall adopt, and if they decide not to, what happens? They are then liable through the writ of mandamus process.
Senator Claes.
I'm going to refer to the revisor because I can't speed read fast enough on this. There is not a enforcement mechanism to force a county or city to follow that particular portion of the statute, though they would be in violation of it.
Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's some good things in here, obviously. Something that helps us address homeless, and there are some challenges with this. It's a pretty wide reaching, and it seems like we'd want to review this more and have some hearings on this. I'm not opposed to some of the concepts, but I am opposed to the amendment right now at this point in time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other questions? Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It almost looks like we have a new bill before us, and when you start talking about telling cities and counties what to do on their ordinances or resolutions, I become very uncomfortable. Since there's so much new material and changes in direction on this, and we're exempt, I would like to put this off to another day so that we have time to digest it. Or I might have a lot to say on the floor. So.
Senator Claes.
Oh, I'd rather have a vote on the amendment today. I think we know who's opposed and who's in favor, and there's really not anyone who's going to come to a different conclusion.
Okay, Senator McGinn?
I really don't know who's in favor or opposed. I noticed that you said you couldn't do some speed reading, and I mean, I'm curious who handed it to you to do, so I don't know what you must know. And because of that, I wouldn't want to pass something that, puts undue limitations on local government when it's not necessary by the state of Kansas to do that. So I would just like to look at it some more. And if I learn more about it, I might come around and like it. But this is a lot to be added to a bill in one day and one glance by this body.
Senator Alley? Oh, excuse me. Senator Clays, would you like to respond?
Yeah, just, I mean, this is done every day in this building, and we have complex amendments that are added, but the whole purpose of the bill and the way that we're arranging this in this particular amendment, the point of it is to get ordinances on the books across the state that are uniform, to eliminate the camping and the individuals who have decided to set up the tent cities. And it is not compassionate in any way to force people to live in tents. There are shelters available. There is shelter space available in many areas of the state, and there's a refusal to use those. And so we are, through this, taking a more compassionate approach, which is having people who are in that situation go to the shelters, receive services, instead of camping in tents by the river. And so I'd like to see a vote on this today. I think that it's relatively straightforward. And if there's any further questions, we can continue.
Senator Alley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern still remains, we talked in here a lot about rural counties also have, we heard from liberal Kansas, they have a need. They're homeless all over. My fear is this goes to metropolitan areas. They've already got a place picked out, and that's what they're going to be there. So I'd like to see the amendment on with rural. Rushing something doesn't always have the positive outcome which we like. So I would like to have all the amendments and take a look at it again.
Senator Clays, do you have one on the rule?
I don't.
Okay, I think Senator Pittman, I was going to say, I think Senator Pittman had one. If Senator Pittman, if you'd like to explain your amendment.
When we get to it at the appropriate time, I've got one that would, right now, the numbers I've got are, it was discussed by the Liberal Kansas, they had 10%, I put 20% of the total amount appropriated for such a grant program to municipalities that have a population, and I put less than 45,000. So it's a little bit for the medium size, I'd say. Liberal Kansas is in that range. And that's what I had, 20% of the fund total goes to those smaller cities. So.
Senator Alley, you have any questions on it? Or would you like to see that amendment ahead of time?
I don't know that are we taking action on this today? Is that what we're trying to do?
Well, I was up to the committee, so.
Are we going to have additional meetings? We are exempt, as she said.
Anytime we want.
Correct.
I'm not opposed to the bill, but I do think that leaving rural out is a big mistake.
Okay. Senator Clays.
Mr. Chairman, we have an amendment in front of us. We do have that amendment that exists, so I think we can satisfy that by disposing of this one and then moving on to the next one and working the bill like we normally do. I understand the senator's concerns, but they're clearly addressed in a future amendment, and I support that amendment too.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, I'm not unfortunately agreeing with, but I do agree with Senator McGinn. There is a lot in this amendment that really makes it very much a different bill, or very much more expanded bill. And Amendment B, talking about the, as was mentioned, the ordinances that cities and counties would be obligated to pass now. Not really even going into depth about what all that includes, as well as Section 5 with the definition for drop-off, homeless individual, and then the penalties involved with if a city or county drops off an individual. I think that really needs a lot more discussion for an understanding of how extensive that is. So, we've had this 40 million in the budget. There was a bill that was on the House side, then there was a bill here on the Senate side dealing with that appropriation. And now we have not only reduction in the amount of money, but quite an extensive change in everything that's referred to. So I agree. I think this bill needs to be, or this amendment, which now is part of 542, or would be part of 542, needs to thorough work. And I also agree with Senator Alley that there should be a piece, has been mentioned in the past, for smaller communities that's included with this amount of money.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions on the amendment that we're discussing here. What was the reason Sedgwick County was left out?
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sedgwick County is not left out. There's just a specific precinct that's omitted from being able to have a facility constructed or an existing improved, and that's a very small sliver of land next to the river.
Okay, so they're allowed to do it somewhere else, just not on that one piece.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And my second question is that when you talk about these things that we're going to require the city to do on the ordinances, that would be subject to if they were granted a grant?
No, it would, sorry,
This
no, it would
everybody
be,
in the state, whether you got a grant or not?
it would be everybody. The portion that relates to those who receive a grant is the reporting function. So those who receive a grant would be required to do the reporting function. Those under attachment B would all be required to have uniform ordinances regarding the items that are listed in attachment B.
Senator McGinn.
Well, I have other suspicions about why we're leaving one precinct out. Probably won't share them here. I'll be happy to share them outside. And I think that that is wrong. And again, we're going to be on the floor all day next week, and we're going to have plenty of time to come back to this bill. And it looks to me like we are having some language and some policy be shoved down our throats, and I don't know what the ramifications would be. I notice I don't see any city or county representatives in here to talk about this either, and they probably don't even know we're doing it. So I oppose this amendment.
Senator Clays. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Would you like to make your motion?
Yep, I move the amendment before you.
We have a motion. We have a second by Senator Fagg. Questions? Seeing none? Oh, excuse me, Senator Alley.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to support this motion, but I expect a amendment coming that will put rule in this bill.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. Senator McGinn would like to be recorded, Senator Petty and Senator Pittman. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. Did you have another one? No. Okay, Senator Pittman.
The revisor could pass out the amendment dealing with the smaller municipalities. In a nutshell, it adds a line. It says the secretary shall award 20% of the total amount appropriated for such grant program to municipalities with a population of less than 45,000. It's a particularly important number to me. It could go down by about 5,000 if we needed it to be a little bit smaller, but I'd appreciate it if we'd support at least that amount.
Questions on the amendment? Senator Alley.
The only thing we're changing on this amendment is the box. The number goes to 15 and then a 5, is that correct?
Senator Pittman.
Well, I think you're saying what would be the amount appropriated? If we now have it at 15 million, it would be 20% of 15 million the first year and 20% of 5 million the second year. So that'd be,
Total dollars is just 20 million as in the other with readaptive. So.
yes, sir.
Senator Fagg.
Senator Pittman, was there anything like when you said 45, that was just a number, and the 20%?
I'll tell you the 20% is a little arbitrary. I thought it should be a smaller number than 50%, but the 45,000, Liberal and Leavenworth have homeless shelters that could really benefit from this, that have all the services that were in the original bill. I have great programs that are all privately funded, and this would really go to help some of those folks in those, I'd call them a little larger rural counties.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My thought is if we had some wording in there that says at least 30%, just put an at least, and then that way it'd cover that. And the other part was like a population of 20,000. And I could go through some places I know, and that's not to say they won't still get into that group with using some verbiage to that. So just a thought. So.
Senator Pittman.
I'm amenable. I'd like to see us at least have some money going to populations of 40 grand or more. And I think the at least is probably a better idea. So that's not a directive, but an at least is actually probably the better wording on this.
Senator Fagg.
So if we stayed on the 20% and went to 20,000 and put at least, how do you feel about that? You still stuck on these numbers?
Senator Pittman.
Senator Fagg, I appreciate it, but I really need to have that number up at about 40,000. If we wanted to have two brackets, 10%, 40,000 to 20,000 and 20,000 and below. But I'd really like to see, I think those people have a concentration of homeless and they have facilities that can concentrate, and it goes to I don't want to say better use, but if we have a community of say 5,000, maybe the money isn't going to be as efficiently used there, but that I can't say that for sure. But I do know that these communities do tend to draw more people in a region, like the testimony said. So we need to have them up at least at a level where if it's a regional facility like they have in Liberal, that they get some of that money, and that's going to be a little bit higher number than I think 20,000.
Senator Fagg. Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What if we changed the word municipalities to county?
Senator Pittman.
If we created another bracket that did that, that'd be fantastic, but I really need to have this be a municipality because the counties that I'm looking at are a little larger than that number.
Senator Alley.
Well, rural counties can have 1,000, 1,500 people in them, some of the rural counties. If we say 45,000 in a municipality, that's where all the money's going to go, to the municipalities. It's not going to go to the areas which they need.
Senator Pitt.
Mr. Chair, I think it's a good point. Maybe we do two brackets so that we hit some of these mid-range cities and then have some that go to some very small communities. I mean, I'd love to work this a little bit more with you and come up with something that would actually work for the smaller communities too, because I understand what you're saying. It is a bigger, and we got to make sure it doesn't necessarily go there. If we go to counties, the county levels that I'd be focus on would be in the 90 and less, and that's bigger than what you're thinking of, I think. So maybe we can come up with something if we continue to work this bill.
Senator Petty.
The term municipality does include cities and counties. I just checked with the reviser staff.
Senator Alley.
For instance, Cali County has about 32,000 population. Hutchinson, what's the population of Hutchinson? How many municipalities are they that are 45,000 and larger? Can you give me a number? I think that's where if my concern is, if you leave this number at 45,000 municipalities in there, that's where it's going to go. I think you need 20% needs to go to rural, and rural is not 45,000, I don't think.
Senator Pittman.
I'll yield to Senator Petty. She has something to say.
Senator Petty.
I was just trying to clarify the term. So that means either a municipality, so that would allow either a county or a city to be able to apply if that's the issue under this, because the term municipality includes cities and counties. But your point is that you want a bracket just for cities of a certain, of a size, or I think I heard the term 20,000 or below, or counties in some sort of category. Is this correct?
Senator Clays.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for some clarity, I think what Senator Alley is getting at is that there are cities in our state that are in very populous counties where one could just game the system of applying for the funds. And if we use counties, then we know that the larger counties are competing for the large pool, regardless of the size of the cities within them. I'm thinking like Leawood would qualify under this. Salina would not. So you would have a kind of an oddity there where a Johnson County would be eligible for the small pot of funds, but Saline County would not. And by moving it to county size, we get at really the heart of the issue, which is we have rural counties or mostly rural counties, and that the number being set, I think your suggestion was at 90,000. I think you get at that issue. You would exclude Douglas, Wyandotte, Shawnee, Sedgwick, and Johnson. They would apply and be under the larger pool. And then the smaller pool would be available to the Leavenworth, Riley, Butler, Reno, Saline, Crawford, and down the line. Now, it doesn't limit them to that pool. It would just simply be at least that sum. So county size of 90,000 may be a different approach that gets at the issue of not just simply gaming the system by having a city of that size in a larger county, if that's acceptable to you.
Senator Pittman.
Yeah, I completely agree. When we talk about it like that, so it's a very good point. With the idea that, the big cities can really suck away the money really fast. I'd like to modify this actually to say at least 20% appropriate from such grant programs go to counties with population of less than 90,000. And I'd like to move that amendment.
Second by Senator Clays. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Pittman.
If David could pass out the next amendment, it's my last one. We heard testimony, I think we heard from, I think it was Sedgwick County, that they would like to expand this so that the matching number, it's dollar for dollar match from the local government, that they could utilize private monies as the matching amount. So this amendment simply allows that matching money to be private monies. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Did you hand the amendment out?
They're making copies right now, Mr. Chair.
Thought I couldn't find mine.
this current, in the old bill, it's on section 5, C. Section 2, number 5, dot C. Basically, the underlying statute would say funding to a local government shall be matched by the local government receiving the funding on the basis of $1 provided by the local government for each $1 provided pursuant to this section. What is added is the unit of local government may receive and use private monies received by such unit for the purpose of meeting the matching dollar amount required by this subsection. So it's basically allowing private money to be substituted for the municipality's taxpayer money.
Well, we have a second by Senator Clays, but we'll wait until we get the language. It printed wrong and they're grabbing some new ones, so. Did you have any other amendments? Did anyone else have any amendments? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we have a second here just for conversation, the thing I worry about is in the rural area, having the ability to match, because you get in these smaller towns, that's the bigger the town is, the more apt they are to match. So just a little conversation before we got this.
Senator Pittman.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't bring up the idea of matching, really. That's in the underlying bill. And I agree, it can be a burden on the local taxpayers, and it can be difficult, but, I mean, it's a commitment from the locals. I think that there should be some skin in the game, and that's the skin that was chosen as a one-for-one match. This allows folks to come together, maybe churches who want to get some of this grant money, though, to support some kind of homeless shelter in the local community. So this would be a way to help ease that burden on those smaller units of government.
Senator Fagg, did you have any? You got it? Okay. Any other questions for Senator Pittman? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Anyone have any other amendments? Oops. Okay, recognize Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee favorably recommend Senate Bill 542 as amended and allow the revisers the leeway to include resolution in addition to each reference of ordinance so that the uniformity applies to cities and counties.
Have a motion, we have a second. Second by Senator Fagg. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. You want to be recorded? Senator McGinn? No? Okay. Senator Petty like to be recorded. Committee, that concludes our final action. We're going to move on and have an informational briefing on bonds by Jim McMurray, Kansas Development Finance Authority. Jim, welcome committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jim McBride. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Development Finance Authority, and I was prompted to appear here today to respond to specific questions about general obligation bonds. I prepared some remarks that would take around 3 minutes to read, if it pleases the chair, or I can just simply answer questions or do both.
Everyone should have a a sheet in front of them if you've had time to look at that. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was the one that kind of asked for this, and where it really hit me was on, when we paid off $4 million the other day, I've seen revenue bonds in there. And I know my understanding is that revenue bonds cost more than general obligation bonds. So my question was why we wasn't doing GOs. So, and kind of for being cost effective, we have an obligation. I don't see us ever defaulting on either one of them. Just thought that'd be a good conversation, trying to save the state some money.
Yes, and that conversation has happened several times in the past during my tenure, and the Kansas Constitution, Article 11, Section 678, have significant restraints and requirements for the issuance of general obligation bonds. So if the state wanted to, entertain the possibility of saving some money in their debt transactions, they'd have to get through those hurdles, and one of those hurdles is going to the electorate and getting a majority result from an election.
Senator Fagg.
So the first thing that I see, it talks about, but not ever succeed in the aggregate of $1 million. So that is a long time ago and totally out of date with where we're at today. So that's just a comment. That's the first thing that jumped at me here. Yep. So this has been forever, and this might be something that down the road we might consider, whatever it takes to change that. Might be worth a try, because how much debt do we have today in Kansas?
Jim?
Annual appropriation debt from the state general fund at the end of fiscal 23 was $1.8 billion.
So we got $1.8 billion, and those are all revenue bonds?
Those are all revenue bonds. They're backed by annual appropriation of the legislature. There's also state highway fund bonds, but that's a separate fund structure set up by statute.
And what kind of difference are we talking in rates, just estimating?
It varies over time, but in today's market, maybe around 0.15 to 0.2%.
And it's been up to 0.5 before, haven't it? I've been in times where there was a bigger spread than that, so.
Yeah, that's not inconceivable to have happened at some point in time. So it does vary with time in terms of how large yields are on an absolute basis, and also the perception of credit risk.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So our forefathers didn't want us borrowing money, basically, and we found a way to get around that by doing revenue bonds. Is that correct?
In effect, yes.
Yep. So I just thought that would be.
Senator Pittman.
Thank you. When was Article 11, Section 6 enacted for the $1 million cap?
I don't have that information available. Perhaps the revisor or legislative research can look it up. But the last time we did, the state did general obligation bonds back in 1919.
I see that it says that we had war bonds basically published after, so it was Article 11, Section 8 authorized in 1919. So presumably $1 million was before that time, right?
That's a reasonable conclusion, yes.
Yeah, and so 100 years of inflation, I wonder what that number would look like. And I'll say this, that just because the forefathers might have had an idea, sometimes we have these constitutional amendments to change things. So we are it's an evolving document. Like you said, that could be modified if we decide philosophically we have differences with that, right?
It's a policy decision, yes.
Senator Petty, please.
Two Ps.
I know.
So as I look at that second paragraph, so the Supreme Court has weighed in on this, is that correct?
Yes.
Would you expound on that?
Well, it extends back to cases back in 1934 and 1949. And, my brief understanding of those two cases is individuals were trying to contest the validity of a debt based on the constitutional requirements, and the basically the Supreme Court decided. In the third case referenced, I can read that portion if you'd like. The court has stated that every presumption must be indulged in the favor of the validity of legislative acts, and unless the judgment of the lawmaking body touching on the subject of the public interest and welfare is entirely devoid of rational basis, the courts cannot interfere therewith.
So, and as I looked in that second line, it basically says, and the third does not violate the Kansas Constitution's restrictions on general obligation debt.
Correct.
Thanks.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm sitting here thinking it costs more to get in debt that way. If we wake up and decide we want to pay something off, it can affect the pricing of who's going to buy it because it's a revenue bond versus a general obligation.
Correct, but also realize in getting that rate, a general obligation, you are making a different commitment. An annual appropriation pledge, it's within the legislature's legal right not to appropriate. With a general obligation pledge, you are making a stronger pledge of raising property taxes in an amount necessary to pay the debt.
Other questions? Senator Fagg. Oh, I thought you had another one.
I'll have more, but I'll think about that one.
Anyone else have any questions? Seeing none. Jim, thank you a lot for being here today. We appreciate the information, and committee, that concludes our work. We're adjourned.